I used to joke that Denver has two speeds, summer patios and winter paperwork. You either breathe on a rooftop and pretend the mountains are yours, or you stand under fluorescent lights while someone tells you to initial here and here and here. I didn't realize the paperwork part could undo a life you worked very hard to make solid. I'm Owen, 34, civil engineer at a firm that names projects after birds. I spend most days telling dirt to behave. My wife Harper does events. She can make a room look like a sentence you want to live in. We met at a food truck rodeo on South Pearl when she cut the line for tacos with the charm of a cat that has never been denied anything, and then turned around, saw me laughing at her audacity, and handed me the extra al pastor she'd snaked. "You look like a person who does math," she said, which I took as a compliment because it was accompanied by a smile that could stop traffic and maybe an ambulance. We were fast and then careful. She liked the spreadsheets I kept for weekend trips. I liked the way she turned my maybe someday into what about next Friday? We rented a one-bedroom with a view of a brick wall we pretended was art. We adopted a shepherd mix named Mako, who arrived anxious and taught us to be a team by accidentally unlocking every baby gate I installed. My sister, who has been married since college, called us cute ambitious, which is her way of blessing a thing without jinxing it. I proposed at the City Park Boathouse with a ring I got from a jeweler who uses the word bench like a verb. Harper said yes with both hands and cried the kind of tears that are good PR for the future. We did a small wedding at a gallery in Reno with string lights and a jazz trio and the kind of vows you write when you're 30 and the world has mostly been kind. "I will build the floor and the ceiling," I told her. "I will make every room a room we both want to come home to," she told me. People clapped. We danced to a song my father said was too slow and my mother said was perfect. The house came after, a 1920s bungalow in West Wash Park with a porch that made strangers smile and a basement that smelled like history and damp. We stretched. I brought the down payment. Harper brought the eye for imagining what a closet could be if it stopped being a closet. We did the closing together in a room with a fake ficus. The title officer slid the deed over and said, "Joint tenancy with rights of survivorship," with the satisfaction of a magician finishing a trick, and we both signed our names like the signatures would mean the same thing forever. If there was a foreshadowing moment, it might have been that first week when the mailbox key became a running bit. Harper insisted she should be mail captain because she loved sorting the chaos, which is a sentence you can only say if chaos has been taught to pour you wine. I let her because I was busy making the old pecs behave. She made a little tray near the door labeled "Incoming," like an office from the 1950s. She put stamps in a jar. She bought a novelty return address embosser and laughed when I teased her about becoming a homeowner in the most earnest way possible. Little things, not red flags, just things you only see later if you're the kind of person who rewinds your life like security footage. Year one of the house looked like a montage. We painted a wall too blue and pretended we meant it. We sealed the porch. We had people over and learned which friends put coasters under their drinks without being asked. Harper built a client list that got fancier. I got promoted to the kind of role where you start using stakeholder, non-ironically. We split utilities down the middle, even though I had paid the down payment because we both live here, we both carry it, she said. And it felt like partnership, she said. And it felt like partnership. The first odd swell in the water came disguised as competence. Harper got very interested in asset protection. She had a client who did family offices, she said, and they'd recommended everyone, even peasants like us, put their homes in LLCs for liability. She started dropping acronyms, QSST, SMLLC, like confetti. I'm not a lawyer, but my job means I read more municipal code than is healthy for a civilian, and I know the rule of thumb. If an idea arrives wearing too many acronyms at a dinner party, it's not for you. "We don't run a business out of the house," I said. "We don't rent it. There's no special tax treatment. Putting it in an LLC doesn't magically do anything except make our insurance agent annoyed." "It makes it safer," she said. "My industry is lawsuit happy. If something happens at an event and they come for me, at least the house." "We carry umbrella liability," I said gently. "We already did the adult part." She made a face I'd come to recognize as disappointment in my imagination. "I'm just trying to protect us," she said. "You could meet me in the middle instead of lecturing." I kissed her hand and said we'd ask a real estate attorney, which we did, and the attorney said exactly what I said but with nicer chairs. We left and Harper laughed and called me, "Well, actually," and we bought ice cream and that was that. Except it wasn't, entirely. She started traveling more for work. Santa Fe, Austin, a site visit in Bozeman that turned into a long weekend with her cousin Reed, who knows everyone up there. I met Reed once at a party. He has the kind of expensive stubble people with jobs that don't require OSHA can grow. He sells lifestyle partnerships, which I think means convincing brands to pay for beautiful people to pretend they use products. He calls everyone brother, even women. Harper has always had a soft spot for golden retrievers who can talk. I didn't love him, but cousins are like weather. If you're expecting me to say I found texts, I didn't. If you're expecting me to say I smelled cologne that wasn't mine, I didn't. The story moved in numbers and stamps. Our HOA, which is more newsletter than enforcement, publishes quarterly notes with little bullet points about flower boxes and community garage sale day. One night in March, I was standing over the recycling bin flipping through the latest when I saw our address under property transfers, not transfers, updates, owner of record, Juniper Haus LLC. I read it again the way you read a sentence in a contract you didn't mean to agree to. Owner of record, Juniper Haus LLC. I took the paper inside like a bomb. "What's this?" I asked, trying too hard to sound like a man on a scavenger hunt, not a man walking a tightrope. Harper glanced over while making a salad. "Oh, that's just an announcement thing. I talked to our agent about doing the LLC transfer after all, not for taxes, just optics. Some clients Google. Nobody needs to see my home address." "You talked to our agent," I said slowly, "because our agent is the kind of person who calls me boss and texts me photographs of his newborn." "It was casual," she said. "Why are you making that face?" "The face that happens when the HOA newsletter knows who owns my house before I do," I said. "Owner of record means recorded. Somebody filed a deed." She set the tongs down. "Owen, relax. It's a quitclaim deed. You sign those all the time on projects. It doesn't change anything except the name on the recorder's index." "It changes who owns the house," I said. "That's what a deed is." "We own the LLC," she said, brightening like a person who has solved your fear with a sentence. 50-50. "What's the LLC's mailing address?" I asked. She blinked. "Why does that matter?" "So the county can mail us tax bills," I said. "So the world knows where to serve lawsuits you are avoiding with your optics." She waved a hand. "My client's counsel set it up. Registered agent. It's a service. They forward everything. It's literally what they do." "Which counsel?" I asked. "You, I asked." "Carly," she said. "You've met her. She did the backdrop at the Bauman Gala. Her boyfriend's a lawyer." "Harper," I said, and the way I said her name took the light out of the room. "Did we sign a deed?" "She's good." She put her hand on my chest and smiled and said, "You sign so many things at closing, you don't have to carry this part. Let me do admin sometimes." "I'm going to the county website," I said, already walking to my laptop, because there are moments when your body knows to get paper before your heart decides what to feel. The Denver Clerk and Recorder's site is a museum of American optimism. You can search by name, date, instrument type, Jones quitclaim last 30 days. There it was, a PDF image of a document recorded 3 weeks ago. Grantor, Owen Walker. Grantee, Juniper Haus LLC. Consideration, 020. The notarization was from a mobile notary named Mara C. The signature looked like mine, written by my left hand during turbulence. "Harper," I said again, quieter now, because quiet is what happens when a building starts to go. She came and stood behind me and put her chin on my shoulder like a sweet cliché. "See," she said, "paperwork." "I didn't sign this," I said, and the sentence felt like stepping backward off a curb you thought wasn't there. She kissed my cheek. "You did," she said. "You just don't remember. It was that morning with the Comcast guy and the plumber and the delivery. You were grouchy and adorable, and you signed a stack and told me you trusted me forever if it meant the internet would work." "Mara C," I said, pointing to the notary's stamp. "Who is that?" "Mobile notary," she said. "She came by with the title runner. It was quick." "Where was I?" I asked. She laughed. "At the table, signing." It will sound dramatic when I tell you I put my hand on the desk because I needed something not alive to hold. It didn't feel dramatic. It felt like choosing to be awake. The next morning, on the way to a job site walk, I swung by a UPS store where a woman named Tammy will notarize any reasonable thing and tell you about her grandson's baseball swing if you ask nicely. "How do I find a mobile notary's number?" I asked. "I want to give someone flowers." She pulled up the Secretary of State's registry and tapped in the name. "Mara C," she said. "Mobile. Here's the number." I called and left a voicemail that said, in a man trying not to sound like a cop voice, that I needed a copy of her journal entry for a deed she notarized for me because I am gathering documents for my accountant. She called back an hour later. I can't just give out journal entries, she said, suspicious-bodied. Are you Owen? Yes, I said. I'd be happy to meet you at a coffee shop of your choosing and show my ID and tip big. She picked a Starbucks near Cherry Creek because notaries, like cops, like neutral ground. She was late and brisk and exactly the sort of person who can make you sign a thing with confidence. She opened a composition book with a stamped number on the inside cover and flipped to last month. That's you, she said, and pointed. Except it wasn't. The entry was filled with a neat block print of a woman who needed to pass audits. Signer, Owen Walker. Document, quitclaim deed. ID, Colorado driver's license. She wrote a number. It looked like my number, except the fourth digit was wrong. She had a thumbprint on the page. Light, distorted. In the comments column, she had written, signer had beard, baseball hat, wife present, signed on kitchen table, high sex. I don't have a beard unless you count a 3-day mess my sister calls sad post Thanksgiving. The number on my license is the number on my license. I showed her my ID. She looked from the entry to my face and went very still. Okay, she said. Now we're going to pretend this conversation is happening at a different speed. Did you meet me? I asked. I met a man who said he was you, she said. He had a driver's license. I looked at the picture. It looked like the man in the seat. Your wife set the appointment. She was there. She made a joke about how you hate paperwork. What did the man look like? I asked, stupidly. Tall, darker than you, she said. Beard, hat. He didn't talk much. The wife handled everything. I didn't love it. The wife is the one who handed me the seal directly from the envelope. You notarized a quitclaim deed transferring title from me to an LLC I did not know existed, I said, careful, not raising my voice because the world doesn't reward volume anymore. I notarized a signature that matched the ID I was shown, she said, equally careful. You can report me if you think I broke law. I will tell the investigator what I told you. I can give you a copy of the entry if you request it in writing. I will also be calling the Secretary of State on my way to my kid's school pickup because this just became my day. Do you remember the wife's last name on her ID? I asked, because sometimes the stupidest questions give you the thing you didn't know you needed. Harper kept her maiden for work, she said. Harper Ramsey. Harper's last name is Walker. She changed it when we married because she liked the way the W looked on invitations. Ramsey is the name on her Instagram bio in parentheses. She used to laugh and say it made her sound heritage. In that Starbucks, the second cup of coffee burned my tongue and I didn't notice. I left with a copy of the journal entry because bureaucracy still sometimes works if you ask politely. In my car, I held the paper and had a very unhelpful thought. How did Reed look in a beard? He could pass for me if you were lazy and wanted to believe the papers in front of you. He's 2 inches taller. He wears a hat like it owes him something. He has the kind of confidence that makes machines wave error messages. When I got home, Harper was cross-legged on the living room rug with 2 mood boards and a client call piped through her AirPods. She smiled and did the 1-second finger when I walked in and then mouthed, I love you, and I wondered if love can survive a document. That night, I checked the Secretary of State's site for Juniper Haus LLC. The registered agent was a service with a suite address downtown. The manager was listed as Redwood Holdings LLC. I clicked. Redwood's manager was Reed Archer. I sat very still and said the name out loud because sometimes a thing only becomes real when the syllables are let out to play. If you're thinking I marched into the living room and threw the printouts down and demanded the truth, I didn't. I learned something a long time ago on a job where a subcontractor accidentally ordered the wrong steel. If you go in with feelings, you get stories. If you go in with nouns, you get leverage. I needed leverage to stop whatever came next. Because of course there was a next. 2 days later, an envelope arrived addressed to Juniper Haus LLC. Harper intercepted it like a center fielder. I reached out a hand and she smiled without her teeth and said, just contracts. That night, after she fell asleep, I pulled up our credit monitoring app and ran my report because the part of my brain that keeps us from getting scammed woke up and wanted to be involved. There it was, a new hard inquiry from a bank we don't use, a product called a home equity line of credit. The application date was the same date as the quitclaim record. I clicked through and saw a public records poll for our parcel number. I lay on my back and stared at the ceiling and counted to 60, and my heart did nothing helpful. I called the bank in the morning and told them in my calmest engineer voice, that any application bearing my name for a HELOC should be flagged as potential identity theft. The rep asked me to verify my mother's maiden name, which is a stupid question at the best of times, and then put me on hold for an eternity and came back with, "There is a pending application listing Juniper Haus LLC as borrower and you as guarantor. I cannot discuss the file with a person not listed as an authorized representative of the LLC." "I'm the person," I said. "I own the house. I did not consent to pledge my assets for a line my cousin set up." "I'm sorry," she said professionally. "You can visit a branch with your ID." At the branch, the manager pulled up the file and tilted the terminal so I couldn't see, but I could smell the fire. "It appears the LLC authorized a representative to sign for the borrower," he said. "There's also a DocuSign certificate of completion on your guarantee. IP address is a mobile network." "I did not sign," I said. "You are about to make a loan secured by my primary residence based on a forged guarantee." He did a face that is a cousin of sympathy but married to policy. "We can place a fraud hold," he said. "We can request the DocuSign audit trail and compare to your IP records. We can also require in-person notarization of any final draw." "Do all of that?" I said. "And put a note in whatever box you put notes that says if you record a lien against my property based on this file, I will sue you until your grandchildren recite my name." At home, Harper was making a grazing board she would photograph and content for a client. "You're home early," she said lightly. "Branch visit," I said. Credit monitoring lit up. "Hey, weird question. Why is Reed's LLC the manager of our house LLC?" She didn't flinch. "She is very good." "Because he set it up," she said. "He knows the filings. He volunteered to be manager so we wouldn't have to sign every little thing." "Every little thing like a HELOC," I said. Her cheeks colored like someone had turned the saturation up on a photo. "We talked about that," she said, "which we had not. It's just so we can fund a garage apartment, rental, passive income. We could stop carrying all of this on your back." "Get a napkin," I said, calm, weirdly calm. "We're going to write down every sentence you just said and label which ones are true." She stared at me like I'd broken the fourth wall in a movie. "You're being dramatic," she said. "We're on the same team." "You forged my signature," I said. "You hired a notary. You put my house in an LLC controlled by a man you call your cousin. You applied for a line of credit using my name as a guarantor without my consent. That is not a team. That is a heist." "You're being mean," she said, and that's when I realized she had already rehearsed this conversation with someone who told her mean is a synonym for won't let me. I left. Not the house. The room. I went into my office and closed the door and took a breath like it owed me rent. Then I did what has saved me more times than my family will ever understand. I made a boring folder. I downloaded the deed image from the recorder. I printed Morrissey's journal entry and taped it to a page with my driver's license photocopy and big arrows pointing to the wrong digit. I pulled the Secretary of State filings for both LLCs. I printed the HELOC inquiry and the branch manager's business card. I requested the DocuSign certificate of completion for the guarantee. When it arrived, I highlighted the IP address and the timestamps. I logged into our router and pulled the DHCP logs for that day. The IP didn't match. I took a screenshot. I printed that too. I made a list on a legal pad labeled nouns and wrote, "In order, the parts of a life that cannot tell pretty stories for you if you don't let them." 2 nights later, Harper said she was going to stay at Moira's because an early call would be easier if she didn't start from our side of town. Moira is real. She's also a category of woman you imagine whispered the word yacht at birth. I said okay and watched the location dot on Find My, which she'd insisted we keep on because safety, drift to Reno and settle in a loft building I knew had a freight elevator and a view of the train tracks the city likes to pretend are art. The dot did not move until the next morning. What do you do when you are almost sure, but not yet the kind of sure a court respects? You keep being boring. I booked a consult with a real estate attorney named Carmel who uses cloud on title like normal people use cloudy. I laid the papers on her conference table like cards at the biggest table in Vegas. She read for a long time and then said, "This is a recording of a forged instrument, a fraudulently executed quitclaim, a fraudulent inducement to a lender, and civic-grade gaslighting. I'm not your therapist, but I am going to ask you if you have a safe place to sleep if you do the next part." "I'm not leaving my house," I said. "I am going to unring the bell." She smiled. The smile of a woman who enjoys a technically correct sentence. "We'll file a quiet title action and a notice of lien pendens to freeze any transfers," she said. We'll name the LLCs and the manager and, because I am not subtle, the notary as a third-party witness so her insurance pays attention. We'll also notice the lender that any lien recorded during the pendency is subject to this action. Meanwhile, because I assume you want a dramatic piece of closure to go with your boring war, I'll reach out to the title company that handles most closings for that lender and let them know you want to attend the signing to provide, let's call it, supplementary identification. Will they let me? I asked. They will if they like keeping their underwriter, she said. I walked out of that office with a folder and a plan and the kind of quiet that makes people move when you enter a room. On the sidewalk, I called my sister. I need you to not ask me to breathe, I said. I need you to ask me for the names of the forms I just filed. She asked. I told her. She said, I have a guest room. And I said I wasn't leaving my house. And she said, I know, I just like saying it. Harper texted me a heart at 11,007 that night. I didn't respond. The next morning, the lender's fraud unit called. The man had an Iowa softness to his voice and the soul of a person who has watched people make small choices that ruin lives. We've halted the line, he said. We've escalated the file. We'd appreciate any documentation you can provide to our legal team. I sent him the folder. He wrote back, we will be withdrawing. You should expect a letter. I printed his email and put it under nouns. Carmel texted me an address and a time for a thing you might enjoy if you like rooms where people discover the existence of gravity. I put on a clean shirt and drove to a title office in a strip mall where dreams go to be spelled correctly. In the conference room, a notary sat with a stack of documents and the look of someone who has learned to recognize bad scripts. The door opened and Harper walked in with Reed, and for 1 second she looked 8 years old and lost, and then she turned into the version of herself that sells rooms for a living. Owen, she said, like a toast, what are you doing here? The notary said, I'm going to check IDs, in a tone that made everyone in the room find their license with both hands. Reed tried to be charming and failed. We're just doing a draw, brother, he said. Admin stuff. I put the DocuSign certificate of completion on the table. This is the electronic signature you had someone else place on my guarantee, I said. This is the IP address. This is my router log. They do not match. If you touch a pen to a single line of paper in this room, I will call a cop and I will use the phrase ongoing fraud and the phrase recording false instruments, and the cop will not be in the mood for your teeth. Harper swallowed and went for the tone of a woman charming a maitre d'. We don't need a scene, she said. You made one, I said. I'm just putting up velvet ropes. The notary did her job. I'm terminating the session, she said to the room. I'm making a note for the file. Any further closings will require in-person notarization with both members of the household present. Please leave. Reed sputtered something about, we'll go somewhere else, and the notary smiled the way people who have seen the internet smile. Good luck, she said. In the parking lot, Harper grabbed my arm. You are trying to ruin me, she whispered. You already did that, I said. I'm trying to make sure a judge can read the nouns. She let go. Reed said a word he thinks hurts men, and I laughed because it was a small word and the room we were in had gotten very big. That night, Harper packed a bag in furious silence. I'll be at Moira's, she said at the door, and then, because she can't help herself, you should be ashamed you don't support my ambitions. I support ambitions that don't involve forgery, I said. She slammed the door the way people in movies do when they want the audience to understand the act break. The house didn't rattle. Old wood knows how to hold. The next morning, I stood on the porch and watched the sun hit the street the way it always does, indifferent and generous. A woman walked by with a stroller and waved because humans are fundamentally decent in the absence of paperwork. I waved back and went inside and made coffee and sat on the floor with Mako and told him we were going to be boring for a while, and it was going to save us. I didn't know yet how many people would decide what side of the line they wanted to be on. I didn't know how many officials would respond to my complaints with anything other than, we appreciate your report. I didn't know whether Harper would lean into the story where I was controlling and cruel and allergic to her success, or whether she'd see the part where you can't steal a man's name and then ask him for a truce. What I knew was this: the county would acknowledge the pendens, the lender would withdraw, the notary would call the Secretary of State because she has insurance and a stomach, the recorder would require a corrective deed to bring title back to the names on the closing day, and Reed would hate that he'd been made to look like a person who gets told no. And somewhere, on some desk, there was a stack of forms with my initials on them that were not my initials. I was going to find every single one and turn them back into the noise they came from. The morning after the title office ambush, I woke up to the sound of Mako's nails skittering on hardwood and realized I could breathe all the way to the bottom of my lungs again. I made coffee. I stood on the porch and watched the block be ordinary on purpose. Then I went inside and started doing what saves me, small, boring things that move the world. Carmel filed the quiet title action and recorded the Lee pendens like she was pinning a sheet over a bleeding thing. "This freezes them," she said. "If they try to sell, transfer, or borrow against it, anyone who searches the property gets a giant legal nope." She had that cheerful predator energy good lawyers get when the facts line up like dominoes. By noon, the lender emailed me a withdrawal letter. "We have closed the HELOC application associated with Juniper Haus LLC," it said, in that careful tone banks use when they are trying to write "sorry" without ever forming the letter S. A fraud investigator called to say the DocuSign audit trail showed a mobile IP out of a co-working space in Reno and a phone number that matched Reed's agency. Website. "You wouldn't believe how many times people think they can beat metadata," he said, almost kindly. "I believe it," I said. The notary Mara left me a voicemail after talking to the Secretary of State. "I'm cooperating fully. I'm submitting my journal and an affidavit that the signer did not match the ID you showed me today. I am very sorry." It was the voice of a person who had just realized gravity is not a suggestion. Her E&O insurer emailed Carmel asking where to send a letter of tender. Carmel smirked. "Their checkbook just woke up." Harper tried a narrative before noon. Group text, our circle, her family, mine. "Hey all, Owen and I are hitting a rough patch," she wrote, breezy, like she was rescheduling brunch. "He's struggling with control issues around finances and didn't like how I structured an LLC for liability protection. We're taking space. We love you. Please be gentle." I put my phone face down and said nothing. Every friend group has one person who knows where the line is. Dev, in ours. He wrote me privately, "Do you want me to tell people what entitled means?" I wrote back, "Please tell people nothing. Let paper talk." Harper must have felt the silence like a draft. She sent me a separate text. "Why are you doing this to me?" I typed 3 answers and erased all of them and sent one sentence. "From now on, talk to me through Carmel." Carmel filed for a temporary restraining order on the finances, a mundane civil injunction, not the kind from TV. It said no more changes to accounts, no more credit apps, no touching the house or the LLCs except to unwind what had been done. The judge signed it by dinner time. "You keep a clean chain and judges like you," Carmel said. "We'll get preliminary injunctions next week." The HOA newsletter did me a favor. It didn't know how to set down. Neighbors started sending me, "Hey, saw y'all in the bulletin, everything okay?" DMs. I sent everyone the same boring sentence. "Fraudulent deed recorded without my knowledge. Legal action in process. We're okay. Pet the dog when you pass." People baked banana bread. People told me about their divorces. People told me in whispers about cousins named not cousins. On Saturday morning, Harper's mother texted that she was deeply disappointed in me. "You're embarrassing our family by involving lawyers," she wrote, as if lawyers were paparazzi I called myself. I wrote back, "A forged deed was recorded against my house. Involving lawyers is called fixing it. I hope you never need to learn that the hard way." She sent back a thumbs down emoji, which would be funny if it wasn't the kind of sad that makes you want to build a new planet. Carmel served the quiet title suit. It landed on the registered agent's desk, which forwarded it to Redwood Holdings, which forwarded it to an email address with Reed's name on it. 30 minutes later, my phone lit up with a number not in my contacts. I let it go to voicemail. It was Reed attempting magnanimity. "Brother, let's not make this ugly. We can reset. We can deed it back to the LLC with us as managers and you as primary guarantor, clean and simple." I forwarded it to Carmel. She wrote back, "Do not respond. He just wrote down conspiracies in better handwriting." She drafted a curt reply to his counsel, attaching the Leah pendens and the complaint. It ended with, "You have recorded a false instrument. Do not make more mistakes." Monday, the recorder's office called. A real human with a real voice said, "Mr. Walker, we received your lease pendens. Thank you for flagging. We'll put a notation on the quitclaim image in the index, subject to pending litigation." It was the bureaucratic equivalent of hanging a "Do Not Enter" sign on a crime scene. Small thrill if you searched the deed, the note popped like a bruise. The courthouse hearing came fast. Preliminary injunctions, status conference on the quiet title, and curveball? The DA had filed a motion to intervene on the narrow issue of whether the deed was fraudulent. "They like clean cases," Carmel said, pleased, "and your file is boring in all the attractive ways." We went. Harper showed up with a lawyer I recognized from billboards. Reed did not appear in person. His attorney wore a sweater that cost more than my first car. The judge was a woman who looked like she kept a screwdriver in her desk for when her chair squeaked. She listened to Carmel lay out the timeline while I sat very still and tried not to decorate her sentences with feelings. Then Carmel handed up 3 exhibits like she was feeding the universe. Exhibit A, the recorded quitclaim deed with my shaky left-handed signature, notarized by Mara's stamp. Exhibit B, Mara's journal entry with beard, baseball hat in neat pen, and my driver's license number off by a digit. Exhibit C, the DocuSign certificate showing my guarantee signed from a mobile IP that, when compared to my router logs and cell provider statement, could not have belonged to me. Carmel kept her adjectives on a leash. "We're not here for adjectives," she said. "We're here for relief. Enjoin any encumbrance, order the recorder to correct the chain upon final judgment, bar the defendants from representing themselves as managers of any entity with an interest in 1620 South Emerson, and order the defendants to preserve all communications and electronic records related to the deed and the attempted line of credit." Harper's counsel did a sunshine voice. "Your Honor, this is a marital dispute being dressed up as fraud to gain leverage in a domestic proceeding. My client sought to protect the marital estate, to create a structure." The judge held up a hand. "Protecting the marital estate does not require impersonating your spouse," she said, brisk. "Nor does it require introducing a third party as manager of an entity owning the homestead. Counsel, we can discuss creative asset protection ideas another day. Today, the question is whether the plaintiff is entitled to injunctive relief." She signed in front of us. "Injunction granted." The recorder was instructed to index the lease pendens and, upon judgment, accept a corrective deed back to the names on the mortgage. She set a quiet title trial date 90 days out and told the DA she was inclined to find the instrument facially suspect. It felt like a surgeon saying, "I see what's wrong, we'll fix it. Don't eat peanuts tonight." After court, in the hallway's muted carpet, Harper tried to catch my eye. "Can we talk?" she said too brightly. I looked at Carmel. She shook her head slow, and I obeyed the only woman in the building I needed to impress. The next day, a detective called. "We're opening a case for recording a false instrument, attempted theft, and criminal impersonation," he said in a tone that told me his week had improved. "We're going to need statements from the notary, you, the bank, and the title office. We'd like to do it without drama. Is that possible?" "I collect boring," I said. "I'll put on a pot of coffee." Crime does not look like TV. It looks like adults at my kitchen table, pens, quiet. Mara sat very straight, hair pulled back like she was appearing in a documentary called How to Not Lose Your Commission, she said into a recorder. I compared the signer's face to the license photo. I now believe I was wrong. He had a beard. I wrote down the number I was shown. The wife did almost all the talking. The bank fraud guy plugged in a drive and transferred logs like 2 dads sharing photos of their kids. The detective signed a chain of custody sheet and tucked it into a folder. "You don't need to be a hero," he told me at the door. "You already did the adult part." Reed blinked first. His counsel emailed an offer, deeded back, signed a mutual non-disparagement, dismissed the quiet title, "No criminal complaint." Carmel typed an answer. "I wish I could frame." "No," she wrote. "Deeded back, pay my client's fees, submit written apologies to the recorder and bank acknowledging wrongdoing, and we will discuss whether we oppose your deferred judgment in criminal court. Non-disparagement is not a shield against the truth." "Jesus," I said, reading it, a little in love with the violence of grammar. "People who do paperwork crimes always ask for NDAs," Carmel said. "It's a tell. They're more afraid of losing the story than losing money." 2 days later, the recorder's office updated the index with a bright new entry, corrective affidavit, fraudulent instrument. It referenced the quitclaim's instrument number, stated plainly that the deed was not executed by the named grantor and was recorded without authority, and that any encumbrance arising from it was void ab initio. The quiet title would still run its course, but the chain of title had a bandage on it now that bled less. Harper's career found its own version of Carmel with a calendar. A corporate client canceled the summer gala. "We need to pause vendor relationships until our compliance review concludes." Another asked for reassurance that strategic partners are aligned with our values. Translation: "Your cousin's reputation smells like smoke." The boutique venue that recommended her on their website quietly replaced Harper Walker events with curated by Elise. I didn't screenshot it. I just watched the dominoes fall like physics. Reed tried to go loud online. He posted an Instagram story about toxic masculinity and men who can't handle a woman making moves over B-roll of sunrise views from a loft I now recognized on site. The comments were all heart emojis from people who get invited to free launch parties and 3, "Isn't that fraud?" from locals who read city council minutes for fun. He deleted it by noon. Someone had DM'd it to me by then anyway. I filed it in a folder labeled Noise. 2 weeks later, the DA charged him with criminal impersonation and attempted theft. He walked into arraignment in a Henley and a shrug. The judge released him on PR with a condition, no contact with me, and no transactions involving real property not in his name. For a man whose job is lifestyle partnerships, that probably felt like someone unplugged his only outlet. Harper's charge sheet looked different. A count of offering a false instrument for recording, a count of aiding and abetting. Her lawyer negotiated fast for a deferred judgment, which meant if she behaved for a year and wrote the letters the DA wanted and took a business ethics course, the case would dismiss. The detective called me first. "I'm not trying to make your divorce a bookings board," he said. "I need to know if you object." "I don't," I said. "I don't need the county to bury her. I need the letter in a file so the next person can see it if they know where to look." He made an approving noise and hung up like a man who prefers boring men. The corrective deed recorded in August, a simple, beautiful thing. Grantor, Juniper Haus LLC. Grantee, Owen Walker. Consideration, $0. Notarized by a woman at the title office with a voice like a principal you want to make proud. Carmel sent me a screenshot of the index with a caption in the subject line, back where it belongs. We filed for divorce the same day because sometimes symbolism helps. My petition said, "Irretrievable breakdown," the polite phrase for your life filing a change of address form. Carmel asked for dissipation, credit for the money and time I'd spent untying a knot I hadn't tied. The judge agreed, the house was mine to keep and the equity was mine to defend. Whatever passive income had been planned had been a mirage. Harper cried when the decree came and asked if she could keep the novelty embosser. I said yes, if she could keep the novelty embosser. The notary's insurer settled my fees. The bank sent a letter that I almost framed. "We have implemented additional verification steps for guarantor authentication in cases involving closely held entities," it read, which is corporate for "that won't work on us twice." Reed's business shriveled. The day his agency website went dark, Carmel texted me a link with a single word, consequences. He pled no contest to the impersonation charge, got a year probation and a fine he will barter his soul to avoid paying, and a restitution order to the bank for the junk file they had to clean. He moved his Instagram to private. The golden retriever routine doesn't play well in municipal court. Harper's letter for the DA arrived in my inbox because I was listed as a victim for the case. It was not PR. It was not written in Instagram captions. It was 2 pages of nouns and the rarest sentence, "I committed a crime because I believed I could narrate a version where it wasn't one." She wrote that she had confused building a life with building a brand, that she had allowed someone who made everything look easy to persuade her that paperwork was a prop, not an oath. She wrote, "I harmed a man who loved me with an error. I rehearsed long enough to believe it was an option. I am sorry." I didn't write back. I didn't need to. The letter wasn't for me. It was for the file and for her future self who might someday need to remember what the word means when you're not holding a ribbon. Life got small and clean. I fixed the damp in the basement by admitting it was a drain issue and not a haunting. I put a simple desk in the second bedroom and called it an office without irony. I took Mako to the park at dusk and watched him pretend not to be scared of bikes anymore. Dev came over with dumplings and brought a plant I couldn't kill. "For the room where you do nouns," he said. Harper came by once to pick up a box of things and stood on the porch like someone wearing a costume of her old life. We didn't do a post-mortem. We didn't reach for old lines. She said, "I liked your folder," and I said, "You would have liked the life if you had trusted it," and we both looked at the porch light until we ran out of courage. A month after the decree, I hosted people on the patio under a string of lights we put up back when we thought vows are enough. I called it a housewarming, even though the house had been warm the whole time. People brought chips, forgiveness, gossip. Neighbors told me about their own Lee's pendenses, like we were trading baseball cards. Someone asked if I had a moral to share. I said, "Sign slow, love faster, and put your name on fewer things than you think you need to." And someone laughed and someone else hugged me and I let the night do the rest. Karma did not arrive like a flaming piano. It arrived like Denver in late fall, incremental, colder, practical. The house stayed mine because I made it boring to steal. The cousin went quiet because a docket number will do that to a man who feeds on impressions. The woman I married learned how a notary stamp is not a sticker and how apology letters live in cabinets you hope no one opens. And I learned that you can be betrayed without becoming a vigilante, that you can be right without becoming loud, and that the best revenge is a chain of title that leads back to your name and a dog who finally sleeps through thunder. Tell me what you would have done. Would you have torched the earth and posted the deed next to their thirsty selfies? Would you have stayed and worked on it because the porch light makes everything look softer? Would you have walked away from the house to keep your peace? Drop your take in the comments. If this one kept you listening, hit like so. It finds the next person staring at a bogus deed in an online index and wondering if they're crazy. Subscribe for more long, messy, true-feeling stories where the twist isn't a dramatic confrontation. It's a lease pendens, a DocuSign audit trail, and a judge who knows the difference between a narrative and a notarization.